My life as a cardiologist was pretty straightforward until Alex walked into my clinic. That day changed everything. I remember it was a busy Tuesday morning, and I was halfway through my coffee when he came in, looking a bit nervous but with a smile that could light up the room. "Good morning, Dr. Smith," he greeted, extending his hand. "I'm Alex. Here for the 10 a.m. appointment." I shook his hand, noting the firm grip. "Nice to meet you, Alex. Please, have a seat. What brings you in today?" He laughed, a bit awkwardly, and said, "Well, I've been getting these weird chest pains." "Probably nothing, but my buddy dared me to get it checked out," said I'm getting old. I couldn't help but smile. "Let's not jump to conclusions. We'll run some tests and see what's up. How old are you, if you don't mind me asking?" 32, he replied, with a grin. "But according to my friend, that's ancient." The consultation went smoothly. Alex was easy to talk to, and he had a way of making the mundane seem interesting. After the tests, I assured him there was nothing serious, just stress-related. He seemed relieved but lingered a bit longer than necessary. "So, Dr. Smith, since I'm all healthy and not ancient yet, would you consider having dinner with me? As a thank you for the peace of mind?" His tone was playful, but I could tell he was serious. I hesitated, not used to mixing work with my personal life. "I'm not sure that's a good idea, Alex. I try to keep professional boundaries." He leaned in, a mischievous glint in his eyes. "Come on, it's just dinner. No strings attached. I promise I'm a decent cook, and I make killer lasagna." I laughed, surprised by his persistence. "All right, lasagna does sound tempting. But just dinner, okay?" "Deal," he exclaimed, looking victorious. In the months that followed, Alex was relentless in his pursuit. He'd show up at my clinic with coffee just the way I liked it or surprise me with tickets to a concert of a band I mentioned in passing. His charm was undeniable, and his attention, intoxicating. 6 months into our whirlwind romance, he popped the question in the most Alex way possible, during a hike, out of breath, and with a ring that was slightly too big. "Erica, I'm probably going to regret this tomorrow when my muscles are screaming, but I can't wait any longer. Will you marry me?" he asked, panting and kneeling on one knee. I laughed, tears in my eyes, both from the joy and the absurdity of the moment. "Yes, Alex, I'll marry you. But only if you promise to carry me back down this trail." That was the beginning of our adventure together. Little did I know, the real challenge was just around the corner. Meeting his mother, Elizabeth, for the first time was when I realized our journey wouldn't be as smooth as I had hoped. She was the epitome of strict and domineering, with a love for her son that bordered on obsession. Our first meeting was over dinner at their family home. Elizabeth eyed me like a hawk, sizing me up as if I were an adversary rather than a potential family member. The tension was palpable, and Alex seemed to shrink a bit under his mother's gaze. "So, Erica, Alex tells me you're a cardiologist. That must be demanding," Elizabeth said, her tone polite but cold. "Yes, it is, but I love my job. It's rewarding to help people," I replied, trying to keep the conversation light. "And you plan to continue working after the wedding?" Her question felt more like an interrogation. I nodded, suddenly feeling defensive. "Yes, I've worked hard to get where I am. I don't see why getting married should change that." Elizabeth's lips thinned into a disapproving line. "I see. Well, I just hope you remember that your first duty is to your husband and future family, not your career." That night, Alex and I had a long talk. He assured me that we'd face whatever came our way together, including his mother's disapproval. I wanted to believe him, but deep down, I knew this was just the beginning. Elizabeth wasn't the type to back down, and neither was I. After the wedding, Alex and I settled into our routine. Life was good, or so I thought, until Elizabeth, my mother-in-law, decided it was her divine mission to fix our lives. Her surprise visits became a regular annoyance, each one marked by her critical eye scanning our apartment like a drill sergeant inspecting a barracks. One Saturday, as Alex and I were enjoying a rare lazy morning, the doorbell rang. I glanced at the clock, 8 a.m., and groaned. Alex shot me a knowing look before heading to the door. Sure enough, Elizabeth barged in, her eyes immediately zeroing in on the unwashed dishes from last night's dinner. "Good morning, Elizabeth," I said, trying to keep my voice neutral. "To what do we owe the pleasure?" She sniffed, ignoring my question. "You know, Erica, a clean home is a happy home. It's not healthy to live in such disarray." Alex, ever the peacemaker, chimed in. "Mom, we were just about to clean up. Why don't you sit down, and I'll make you some coffee?" But Elizabeth was on a roll, her gaze now fixed on the living room. "And that couch. It's all wrong for the space. Have you considered moving it against the other wall? And those curtains. Dear, they do nothing for the room." I bit my tongue, counting to 10 in my head. Alex, sensing my growing irritation, tried to steer his mother towards the kitchen. "Mom, seriously, the coffee. Let's go." As they disappeared into the kitchen, I followed, not ready to let Elizabeth have free rein in my apartment. The criticism didn't stop at the decor. Next, she launched into our dietary habits when she noticed the takeout boxes in the trash. "Eating out again? You know, Erica, a wife should take care of her husband's health. Home-cooked meals are the cornerstone of a happy marriage." That did it. I could handle the digs at my cleaning and decorating, but questioning my role as a wife was a step too far. "Elizabeth, I appreciate your concern, but Alex and I are quite happy with our arrangement. We both work long hours, and sometimes, takeout is just easier." She tooted, shaking her head. "I just don't understand your generation. When I was your age, I had a home-cooked meal on the table every night for my husband and son." Alex, bless him, jumped to my defense. "Mom, times have changed. Erica's not just a housewife. She's a brilliant cardiologist, and I'm fully capable of cooking or ordering pizza if it comes to it." The conversation was going nowhere, and Elizabeth's presence was starting to suffocate me. I excused myself, claiming a sudden headache, and retreated to our bedroom, leaving Alex to handle his mother. One day, the invasion reached a new level. Alex and I had planned a weekend getaway, just the two of us, to recharge. We returned home to find our apartment spotless, but not in the way we left it. Furniture was rearranged, new curtains hung in the living room, and our bedroom looked like it had been ripped out of a home decor magazine. "What the?" I started, my eyes wide as I took in the changes. Alex was equally shocked. Did we get robbed by an interior decorator? Before we could process everything, Alex's phone rang. It was Elizabeth, sounding far too pleased with herself. "Did you notice the changes? I couldn't stand to see your apartment in such a state. You'll thank me later." Alex's face turned red, his usual calm demeanor slipping. "Mom, why would you think this is okay? You can't just come in and rearrange our lives." Her response was as infuriating as her actions. "I'm just trying to help. It's clear Erica doesn't know the first thing about keeping a home. Someone had to step in." That was the last straw. Alex, usually the one to smooth things over, was livid. He made it clear to his mother that her help was not welcome and that she was to call before visiting in the future. The news of the pregnancy came as a surprise. Not an unpleasant one, but a surprise nonetheless. I remember staring at the test, my heart racing, until Alex found me in the bathroom, my face probably a picture of shock and awe. "What's up, babe? You look like you've seen a ghost," he said, leaning against the doorway with that easy smile of his. I handed him the test without a word, watching as his expression shifted from curiosity to outright joy. "Seriously? We're gonna have a baby?" he whooped, lifting me off the ground in a tight hug. "Yeah, seems like it," I managed, the reality of it all beginning to sink in. We decided to tell Elizabeth and Alex's dad, Robert, over dinner at their place. Predictably, Elizabeth's reaction was intense. A baby? Oh, my goodness, this is wonderful news. Finally, I'm going to be a grandmother. Her excitement was genuine, and for a moment, I saw a softer side to her. Robert was equally thrilled, beaming with pride. Congratulations, you too. This is fantastic news. But, of course, Elizabeth couldn't let the moment pass without slipping in her 2 cents. Erica, you'll have to be very careful now. Pregnancy isn't easy, and with your job. Well, I just hope you're planning to take it easy. I bristled at the comment, ready to defend my ability to work and be pregnant, but Alex squeezed my hand under the table, a silent plea to let it go for the night. The pregnancy wasn't easy, as Elizabeth had so eagerly predicted. My peanut allergy, always a nuisance, became a constant threat, requiring me to be extra vigilant. Elizabeth, ever the helpful in-law, had plenty to say about that too. During one particularly difficult week, when I was feeling run down and tired from juggling work and pregnancy, Elizabeth dropped by unannounced, as was her habit. Erica, you look exhausted. Are you sure you should still be working? A woman in your condition needs to rest, she clucked, eyeing me like I was a fragile piece of china. I sighed, not in the mood for a lecture. Elizabeth, I'm fine. My doctor says it's okay to work, and I need to stay active. But your allergies, dear. It's just not safe. What if something happens? You're not just responsible for yourself now, she pressed, her tone a mix of concern and criticism. Alex came to my rescue, walking into the room with perfect timing. Mom, Erica's a doctor. She knows what she's doing. Let's not stress her out more, okay? Elizabeth huffed, clearly not convinced, but dropped the subject. Her concern was touching, in a way, but suffocating. I was a cardiologist, for crying out loud. I knew how to take care of myself and my baby. When we found out we were having a girl, Elizabeth's excitement reached new heights. A granddaughter. Oh, Alex, we must start planning the baby shower immediately. And the nursery. Erica, have you thought about the nursery? After Emily was born, I took a year off to be with her, which was amazing, but also isolating. I missed my work, my colleagues, and the part of me that thrived on helping others. So, I decided it was time to go back, at least part-time, which meant we needed a nanny. The plan seemed simple enough until Elizabeth caught wind of it. She showed up unannounced, as was her way, her face stormy the moment I opened the door. A nanny? Really, Erica? You're going to let a stranger raise our Emily? She practically spat the words out, her disdain for the idea palpable. I sighed, bracing myself for the inevitable confrontation. Elizabeth, it's not like that. I'm going back to work part-time. We need someone to watch Emily, Anne. And what? I'm not good enough to watch my own granddaughter. She cut in, her voice rising with each word. It wasn't that she wasn't good enough, it was just that. Well, Elizabeth and I had our differences, and the thought of dealing with her criticisms on a daily basis made my stomach turn. But she was family, and deep down, I hoped this might bridge the gap between us. Look, if you want to help, that would be great. But we're going to do this my way. I can't have you undermining me at every turn, I said, trying to sound more confident than I felt. Elizabeth's eyes narrowed, but after a moment, she nodded. Fine. But I expect to be paid like any other nanny. That should have been my first red flag. Paying Elizabeth felt weird, but if it kept the peace, I was willing to try it. However, peace was the last thing it brought. Every day, I'd come home to a litany of complaints. You're out of laundry detergent again, or, I had to throw out that stale bread. Don't you ever clean out your pantry? It was relentless. Alex tried to mediate, bless him, but it was like trying to stop a hurricane with a fence. One day, I'd had enough. I walked in to find Elizabeth berating me for the tasteless dinner I'd prepared for Alex the night before. You can't feed a child, let alone a grown man, with this slop. That was it. I snapped. Elizabeth, I'm done. I appreciate your help, but this isn't working. You need to stop coming over. Her face went from angry to furious. Fine. See how well you manage without me. She slammed the door on her way out, leaving me shaking but strangely relieved. Alex came home to find me sitting at the kitchen table, a mix of emotions swirling inside me. She left, I said, simply. He sighed, wrapping his arms around me. I'm sorry, Erica. I know she's my mom, but you're my wife. We'll figure this out together. And that was that. Elizabeth's reign as the nanny from hell was over, and despite the drama, a weight had been lifted. We found a lovely local girl to help with Emily, and life settled into a new, happier rhythm. The day after our big blow-up, Elizabeth called me as if nothing had happened. Erica, I've been thinking, we got off on the wrong foot yesterday. I baked a pie. Thought I'd come over, maybe we can start fresh? I was on edge, still reeling from our last encounter. The last thing I wanted was to see her, but the constant fighting was draining. Maybe this pie was her olive branch. All right, Elizabeth. Let's try this again. I sighed, hoping for the best, but expecting the worst. She showed up 2 hours later, pie in hand, smiling as if we were old friends. Here, I made your favorite. Let's put all that unpleasantness behind us, shall we? I forced a smile, taking the pie. Thanks, Elizabeth. That's very kind of you. Just then, my phone rang. Work needed me, urgently. My heart sank. I couldn't leave Emily alone, not with things so strained between Elizabeth and me. Actually, Elizabeth, I just got called into the clinic. Would you mind watching Emily for a bit? I asked, the words tasting bitter in my mouth. Her eyes lit up, a stark contrast to the dread filling my stomach. Of course, dear. Go, don't worry about a thing. We'll have a grand time. I hesitated, looking at Emily, then back at Elizabeth. There was no choice. Okay, I'll be as quick as I can. Thank you, Elizabeth, I said, rushing to gather my things and head out the door. Driving to work, my mind wasn't on the emergency waiting for me, but on Emily and Elizabeth. The uneasy truce felt fragile, and I couldn't shake the feeling of dread about leaving them together. Every minute dragged on, my thoughts constantly drifting back to how Emily was doing, hoping that Elizabeth's offer to make amends was genuine and not just another tactic to assert her control. The day was dragging on, my mind a constant cycle of worry about Emily and trying to focus on work, when my phone rang. It was Elizabeth, panic-edging every word as she practically yelled, Erica. Emily, she can't breathe properly. You have to do something. My heart plummeted. Calm down, Elizabeth. Tell me exactly what's happening, I said, trying to keep my voice steady despite the rising panic. She's wheezing and her face is all puffed up. What do I do? Elizabeth's voice cracked, a mix of fear and confusion bleeding through. I knew immediately what was happening. Listen to me very carefully. Go to the kitchen, second drawer. There's an EpiPen. Use it now. I'm calling 911 and I'm on my way. Hanging up, I dialed 911, explaining the situation as best as I could while grabbing my keys and rushing out the door. My mind raced, thoughts jumbled. How did this happen? We were so careful with food. I made it home in record time, finding the paramedics already there, attending to Emily. The relief that washed over me when I saw her breathing was better, albeit still strained, was indescribable. Elizabeth was a mess, pacing back and forth, her earlier accusations forgotten in the face of the emergency. I don't know how this happened, Erica. I swear, we didn't eat anything unusual, she said, her voice trembling. I didn't have time to respond, my focus solely on Emily as the paramedics worked. They decided to take her to the clinic for further observation, not wanting to take any chances. I nodded, understanding and grateful for their thoroughness. At the clinic, they confirmed it was anaphylactic shock, likely from a food allergen. I couldn't wrap my head around it. We were so careful, especially with Emily's and my allergies. There must have been some cross-contamination, I muttered, more to myself than anyone else. Elizabeth was quick to defend herself. I didn't give her anything from the list you gave me. You have to believe me, Erica. I'd never put Emily in danger. I was too tired to argue, too relieved that Emily was okay to hold on to anger. We spent the rest of the day at the clinic, Emily gradually returning to her usual self, though still a bit groggy from the medication. That evening, after the longest day of our lives, Alex and I sat in the living room, holding each other, grateful for the quiet and that Emily was safe in her bed. The stress and fear had drained us both, but there was a sense of relief that it was finally over. Alex, ever the caretaker, got up to make us some tea. He spotted the pie his mom had brought over earlier on the kitchen table. "Hey, you want a piece of pie Mom brought?" he asked, trying to lighten the mood. "No, thanks. Just tea for me," I said, not having the slightest appetite for anything, especially not that pie. He shrugged and cut himself a piece. That's when he noticed something that stopped him cold. Looks like someone already had a bite." Then he took a bite, chewed thoughtfully, and his face changed. "Wow, that's a strong smell of peanuts." My heart stopped. Peanuts. The reality hit me like a ton of bricks. "Alex, that's it. The peanuts. Your mom, she knows I'm allergic. And Emily." I couldn't finish the sentence, the implication too horrifying to voice fully. The next day, we confronted his parents. The tension was palpable as we laid out the accusations. Alex, usually so calm, was shaking with anger. "Mom, did you put peanuts in that pie? You know Erica and Emily are allergic. What were you thinking?" His mother's face was a mask, but her eyes, there was something in them that chilled me. I just wanted to make a pie. I didn't think. But Alex wasn't having any of it. Didn't think? Or didn't care? "You could have killed our daughter." That's when his dad stepped in, his voice thunderous. "Is this true? You endangered your granddaughter? I can't believe this. I'm calling the police." And he did, right there and then. The police came, and faced with the evidence, Elizabeth didn't deny it. "I just wanted Erica out of the way," she said, a statement that would haunt me forever. After everything that went down, the dust finally settled. Elizabeth was sentenced to prison, a severe punishment that kept her away for a good long while. It was a tough pill to swallow, seeing family torn apart like that, but it was necessary, for Emily's safety and our peace of mind. A few weeks after the trial and all that, Alex's dad, Robert, showed up at our door. It was the first time we'd seen him since everything happened. The man looked like he'd aged years in just a few months, weariness etched into every line on his face. He didn't waste any time, just got right to the point. "Erica, Alex. I'm so sorry. For what Elizabeth did. I can't even begin to. I just never thought." Alex cut him off, not unkindly. "Dad, it's okay. We know you had nothing to do with it." Robert nodded, his eyes misty. "I brought something for Emily. And, if it's all right with you, I'd like to see her. Missed her like crazy." Looking at Alex, we shared a silent conversation. This was his dad, Emily's granddad. Family, despite the chaos and hurt. "Of course, she'd love to see you, Robert. Wouldn't you, Emmy?" I said, turning to our daughter who was eyeing the big bag of gifts with wide, curious eyes. "Grandpa," Emily squealed, recognizing him instantly. The joy in Robert's eyes was unmistakable as he knelt down to hug her, handing over the gifts one by one, each wrapped with care. Later, sitting down with cups of coffee, Robert spoke up again. "I've filed for divorce. Can't stay married to someone capable of, well, you know. It's hard, after all these years, but it's for the best." Alex put a hand on his father's shoulder. "It's going to be okay, Dad. We're here for you. We're family." "Yeah," I added, squeezing Alex's hand. "We'll get through this together." And hey, Emmy's got her grandpa back. That's all that matters. Robert smiled, a genuine, relieved smile. Thank you, both of you. Means the world to me. I just want to be a part of your lives, and Emmy's. Make up for lost time. And that was our new beginning. A fresh start, not just for us, but for Robert too. Life had thrown us a curveball, but we'd caught it, and now, we were moving forward, together.
The stale air in the living room felt suffocating as Carol's words sliced through me like a dagger. Why don't you just admit you're a failure? She spat, arms crossed, her icy glare piercing into my soul. Matt swiftly stepped in front of me, shielding me from his mother's venomous rage. His broad shoulders tensed, a physical barrier against the torrent of cruelty that had become all too familiar. That's enough, Mom, he said, his voice low but firm. We've barely set our bags down, and you're already starting this again. Carol's lips curled into a snarl. Well, it's the truth, isn't it? My son deserves better than a barren wife who can't even give me grandchildren. The words stung like acid, but I remained silent, biting my lip to hold back the tears threatening to spill. This was our life now, a constant battle against Carol's relentless verbal assaults and manipulations. Matt's hand found mine, squeezing it reassuringly. We're not having this discussion again. Julia is my wife, and I love her. That's all that matters. Carol threw her hands up in exasperation. Fine, keep living in denial, but don't come crying to me when you realize the mistake you've made. With that, she stormed off, leaving a tense silence in her wake. I let out a shaky breath, leaning into Matt's embrace. I'm so sorry, he murmured, his warm breath tickling my ear. I never should have agreed to stay here. Pulling back, I mustered a weak smile. It's not your fault. We had no idea it would be this bad. Matt's brow furrowed, his eyes filled with a mixture of sorrow and determination. We can't keep living like this, Julia. It's not healthy for either of us. I nodded, my heart heavy with the realization that our once peaceful lives had been shattered by the toxic presence of a woman who was supposed to be family. But in that moment, I knew we had to find a way out, for our own sanity and the future we so desperately craved. As I lay awake that night, my mind drifted back to the winding roads that had led me here, a world away from the small Kansas town where I was raised. Growing up, I had always dreamed of escaping the confines of that rural life, yearning for the excitement and opportunities that big cities promised. It was that desire that propelled me through college, studying economics with a laser-focused determination. And when I landed a job as an accounting clerk in San Francisco, fresh out of university, it felt like the first step toward my new life. The city was everything I had imagined and more, a vibrant, pulsing hub of culture, ambition, and endless possibilities. It was there that I met Matt, a kind-hearted city native who worked in the planning department. From our first date, there was an undeniable connection, a spark that transcended our vastly different backgrounds. Matt was charmed by my small-town roots, finding a refreshing innocence in my wide-eyed wonder at the big city, and I was captivated by his confidence, his worldliness, and the way he effortlessly navigated the fast-paced urban landscape. It didn't take long for us to fall deeply in love, and when Matt proposed, I said yes without hesitation. I was ready to start this new chapter of my life, blissfully unaware of the storm that was brewing on the horizon. At first, Carol seemed warm and welcoming, embracing me with open arms as the daughter-in-law she had always wanted, but that facade quickly crumbled once the subject of children came up. So, when can I expect some grandkids? She would ask, a glint of determination in her eyes that made me shift uncomfortably. Matt would brush it off with a nervous chuckle, but I could sense the mounting tension each time the topic arose. It was as if Carol viewed my sole purpose as being a vessel for her grandchildren, and my inability to conceive immediately raised her suspicions. The comments became more frequent, more pointed, until they evolved into outright accusations. "You're not getting any younger, you know," Carol would remark, her words laced with venom. "The clock is ticking." I tried my best to ignore her jabs, pouring my energy into my job and my marriage. But with each passing year, Carol's grip tightened, her manipulation growing more insidious. The nightmare truly began when Carol faked an injury, forcing Matt and me to move in with her to help with her recovery. At first, we rationalized it as a temporary situation. A few weeks, maybe a month or two at most. But those weeks soon stretched into years, and Carol's true colors emerged in full force. "I don't know why you're wasting your time with that job," she would sneer as I got ready for work each morning. "You should be focusing on having babies, not crunching numbers." Her words cut deep, but I tried to brush them off, reminding myself that she was just a bitter, lonely woman lashing out. Matt did his best to shield me from the worst of her attacks, but Carol was relentless. She would slip fertility clinic pamphlets into my bag when I wasn't looking, or leave them strategically placed around the house. "Just in case you change your mind," she would say with a sickly sweet smile that made my skin crawl. The emotional toll was immense. I found myself constantly on edge, dreading each interaction with Carol, yet powerless to escape her clutches. My once thriving career began to suffer as the stress and anxiety took their toll, and even my relationship with Matt started to strain under the weight of it all. "Maybe we should just leave," I suggested one night, my voice thick with emotion. "This is too much, Matt. I can't take it anymore." He pulled me close, his strong arms providing a temporary refuge from the storm. "I know, baby, but where would we go? We can't afford our own place right now." It was a harsh reality, one that left me feeling trapped and hopeless. Carol had us right where she wanted us, and she reveled in our misery. "You know, if you really loved my son, you'd give him what he wants," she would say, her words dripping with malice. "But I guess you're just too selfish for that." Each barb felt like a dagger to my heart, and I found myself questioning my own worth. Was I really failing Matt by not being able to have children? Did he resent me for it, deep down? But whenever I voiced these fears, he was quick to reassure me. "Don't listen to her, Julia. You're everything to me, and I love you just the way you are." Still, the doubt lingered, fueled by Carol's relentless campaign of psychological torture. It was a vicious cycle that seemed to have no end in sight. I stepped through the front door, my shoulders slumped from another long day at the office. The familiar scent of home greeted me, but something felt off. An eerie silence hung in the air, and as I made my way down the hallway, a knot began to form in the pit of my stomach. When I reached our bedroom door, my heart dropped. The room was completely bare. No furniture, no decor, not a single personal item in sight. Just 4 empty walls staring back at me. "Matt?" I called out, my voice trembling. "What's going on?" He appeared in the doorway, his face pale and eyes wide with a mixture of confusion and dawning realization. Without a word, he brushed past me and began frantically searching the other rooms. I followed close behind, my heart pounding in my chest as the truth slowly sank in. Room by room, we found the same scene, our belongings stripped away, leaving nothing but hollow spaces. Finally, we made our way to the living room, where the source of this nightmare was waiting for us. Carol sat smugly on the couch, surrounded by trash bags overflowing with our possessions. "Looking for something?" she sneered, her lips curled into a sickening grin. Matt's hands balled into fists at his sides. "What the hell have you done, Mom?" Carol rose to her feet, her eyes boring into me with a hatred I had never witnessed before. "I'm just doing what any good mother would do, protecting her son from a worthless wife who can't give him children." The words hit me like a physical blow, stealing the breath from my lungs. I wanted to scream, to lash out, but I found myself paralyzed by the sheer cruelty of her actions. Matt stepped forward, positioning himself between Carol and me. "You're out of your mind." He spat. "This is too far, even for you." Carol's laughter was like nails on a chalkboard. "Oh, please, don't act so surprised. You knew this was coming. She's never going to be good enough for you, and it's time you opened your eyes to that fact." With a swift motion, she grabbed a trash bag and hurled it at Matt's feet, its contents spilling out in a jumbled heap. My clothes, my books, my most cherished mementos. "Get out of my house," she snarled, her eyes burning with a fury I had never seen before. "Both of you, and don't come crawling back until you've come to your senses." In that moment, everything became crystal clear. This was no longer just a battle of words or a clash of wills. Carol had crossed a line, and there was no going back. As I gathered what little I could into my arms, I felt Matt's hand slip into mine, a silent reminder that we were in this together. We may have lost our possessions, but we still had each other, and that was something Carol could never take away. With our meager belongings stuffed into a couple of suitcases, Matt and I fled to the safety of a hotel room, our sanctuary from Carol's wrath. As the door clicked shut behind us, I finally allowed the tears I had been holding back to flow freely. "I'm so sorry," Matt whispered, pulling me into his embrace. "This is all my fault. I should have protected you from her." I shook my head, burying my face in the crook of his neck. "No, this isn't your fault. Your mother. She's gone too far this time." We stood there, clinging to each other as the weight of what had happened slowly sank in. Carol had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed, and in that moment I knew our lives would never be the same. After what felt like an eternity, we finally broke apart, and I sank onto the edge of the bed, my body and spirit drained. Matt sat beside me, his arm wrapped around my shoulders, providing the strength I so desperately needed. "Julia," he began, his voice thick with emotion, "I need you to know something. No matter what happens, no matter what my mother says or does, you are everything to me. You're my world, and I wouldn't change a single thing about you." His words were like a balm to my wounded soul, and I found myself falling in love with him all over again. This man, who had stood by me through the worst of his mother's cruelty, still saw me as the most precious thing in his life. "I love you too," I whispered, my fingers intertwining with his. "And I promise we'll get through this together." It was in that moment of vulnerability and connection that I felt a flutter deep within me, a subtle reminder of the life we had created together. A life that Carol knew nothing about, a secret gift that had blossomed despite her best efforts to destroy us. As if sensing my realization, Matt's eyes widened, his gaze dropping to my stomach. "Julia, are you—" I nodded, a tremulous smile spreading across my face. "I just found out a few days ago. I was waiting for the right time to tell you." Matt's expression shifted from shock to pure unbridled joy as he cupped my face in his hands, planting a tender kiss on my forehead. "This changes everything," he murmured, his voice thick with emotion. And in that moment, a plan began to take shape, a way for us to start anew, free from Carol's toxic influence. We would fake a divorce, change our names, and disappear from her life completely. No more manipulation, no more cruelty, just the two of us and our precious little one, embarking on a fresh start filled with love and hope. As I drifted off to sleep that night, cradled in Matt's arms, I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, we would face them together. Carol may have tried to break us, but in the end, she had only made us stronger, more resilient, and more determined than ever to build the life we deserved. With a sense of determination fueling our every move, Matt and I set our plan into motion. We knew it was the only way to truly escape Carol's toxic grasp and start fresh. First, we filed for divorce, a heartbreaking formality, but a necessary step in severing our ties to our old lives. The legal paperwork was a mere technicality, a smokescreen to conceal our true intentions from Carol. Next, we changed our names. No longer would I be Julia, the woman Carol had tormented and belittled. I became Emily, a new identity unburdened by the past. And Matt shed his old self, emerging as Michael, a man reborn, ready to embrace the future we were crafting together. Every detail was meticulously planned, from establishing new email accounts and social media profiles to obtaining fresh identification documents. We left no stone unturned, ensuring that Carol would have no way to track us down once we disappeared. With our new identities in place, we began the search for a new home, a sanctuary where we could raise our child in peace, far away from Carol's poisonous influence. It wasn't an easy task, but eventually we found the perfect little house in a quiet neighborhood, a world away from the chaos we had left behind. As we unpacked our belongings in our new home, a sense of liberation washed over me. This was a fresh start, a clean slate where we could write our own story, free from the shackles of the past. "I can't believe we're finally here," I murmured, running my hand over the swell of my growing belly. Michael smiled, his eyes shining with a happiness I hadn't seen in far too long. "Believe it, Emily. This is just the beginning." In those early days, we lived in a state of constant vigilance, ever watchful for any sign that Carol had caught wind of our whereabouts. We knew that if she ever discovered our ruse, she would stop at nothing to track us down and reclaim her twisted sense of control. But as the months passed and our little one grew stronger within me, our fears began to subside. We had successfully slipped through Carol's grasp, vanishing without a trace. With each kick and flutter, our determination to build a life free from her toxicity only grew stronger. We poured our hearts into creating a nurturing environment for our child, filling our home with love, laughter, and all the joy that Carol had so desperately tried to deny us. And when the day finally came, and our beautiful son entered the world, we knew that every sacrifice, every hardship had been worth it. Cradling him in our arms, we made a silent vow. Nathan would never know the pain and torment we had endured. He would grow up surrounded by unconditional love, cherished and protected from the cruelty that had once threatened to consume us. As I gazed into his innocent eyes, I knew that our journey had only just begun. But this time, we were the authors of our own story, and nothing, not even Carol's darkest machinations, could ever tear us apart again. The holidays had always been a bittersweet time for me, a reminder of the family I had lost when we cut ties with Carol. But that year, as Michael and I sat by the twinkling lights of our Christmas tree, our little Nathan babbling happily in my arms, I felt a sense of peace and contentment I hadn't known in years. We had built a life beyond our wildest dreams, a safe haven where love and laughter reigned supreme. Carol was little more than a distant memory, a specter from the past that no longer held any power over us, or so we thought. It was a few days after Christmas when the fateful envelope arrived, its nondescript appearance giving no hint of the bombshell it contained. Michael slid it open with a casual flick of his finger, and that's when our world came crashing down around us. Inside was a simple Christmas card, but the image it bore was enough to steal the breath from our lungs. There we were, smiling radiantly, our new names emblazoned beneath our faces, Emily and Michael. And cradled between us the precious bundle that had given our lives new meaning, our son Nathan. How? I choked out, my hands trembling as I clutched the damning evidence. How could she have found us? Michael's face had drained of all color, his expression a mask of disbelief and dawning horror. I don't know, he whispered, his voice barely audible, but she knows everything. In that moment, the illusion of safety we had so carefully constructed shattered like fragile glass. Carol had found us, and with that simple act, she had reclaimed the power to torment us, to disrupt the sanctuary we had built. The phone rang, its shrill tone piercing the oppressive silence that had fallen over our home. Michael answered with a terse greeting, his jaw clenched so tightly I could see the muscles rippling beneath his skin. Hello, dear. Carol's sickly sweet voice crackled through the speaker, laced with a smugness that made my blood run cold. Did you like my little surprise? Michael's knuckles whitened as he gripped the phone, his entire body rigid with barely contained fury. How did you find us? He demanded, his voice a low growl. Carol's laughter was like nails on a chalkboard. Oh, please. Did you really think you could hide from me forever? I'm your mother, Michael. I know you better than anyone. The vitriol spewed forth, a torrent of accusations and recriminations that laid bare the depths of Carol's depravity. She spared no detail, flaunting her deceptions and thefts as if they were badges of honor. With each poisonous word, I felt my resolve hardening, my love for Michael and our son burning brighter than ever before. This was our life, our family, and no twisted, bitter woman would ever be allowed to taint it again. When Michael finally found his voice, it was laced with a steely determination that sent a chill down my spine. Listen to me, and listen closely, he growled. You are never to contact us again. You are never to come near us or our son. As of this moment, you are dead to me. Do you understand? Carol's response was a shriek of outrage, but Michael had already ended the call, slamming the phone down with a finality that reverberated through the room. As he gathered me in his arms, I knew that this was the end. The true, final severing of the toxic bond that had plagued us for far too long. Carol's machinations had failed, her cruelty ultimately serving only to strengthen the love and resilience that bound our little family together. From that day forth, we vowed to live our lives on our own terms, unburdened by the weight of the past. Nathan would grow up cherished and adored, never knowing the darkness that had once threatened to consume us. And as for Carol, well, let's just say that karma has a way of evening the scales, a lesson she would soon learn in the most brutal of ways. The years that followed were a whirlwind of joy and growth, as Michael and I savored every moment of raising our precious Nathan. With Carol's toxic presence firmly in the rearview mirror, we were finally able to breathe freely, basking in the warmth of our little family. Of course, the news of her grandchild's existence had hit Carol hard, a harsh karmic retribution for all the pain and anguish she had inflicted upon us. But we refused to let her bitterness and resentment cast a shadow over our happiness. Instead, we focused our energies on building the life we had always dreamed of. Michael's hard work and dedication paid off with a well-deserved promotion, allowing us to move into a spacious home with a lush backyard where Nathan could run and play to his heart's content. As for me, I finally found the courage to pursue my own professional ambitions, enrolling in night classes to earn a degree in accounting. It was a grueling schedule, juggling motherhood and studies, but Michael was my rock, supporting me every step of the way. On the rare occasions when doubt crept in, whispering insidious thoughts of inadequacy, I would look into Nathan's adoring eyes and find the strength to push forward. He was my inspiration, my constant reminder of the love and resilience that had carried us through our darkest days. And then, one crisp autumn day, a letter arrived, an invitation to my parents' house for a long-overdue family reunion. My heart swelled with a mix of joy and trepidation as I realized how long it had been since I had seen the people who had once been my whole world. Michael must have sensed my apprehension, for he pulled me close, pressing a tender kiss to my forehead. "It'll be okay," he murmured. "They're your family, Emily. They love you." With his reassurance bolstering my courage, we packed our bags and set off on the long journey back to Kansas. Nathan practically vibrating with excitement at the prospect of meeting his grandparents for the first time. The moment we stepped through the door of my childhood home, it was as if no time had passed at all. My parents swept us into their warm embrace, tears of joy streaming down their faces as they marveled at the beautiful little boy clutching my hand. "Oh, Julia, Emily," my mother corrected herself, her eyes shining with love and acceptance. "We're so proud of you, sweetheart. You've built an amazing life for yourself." My father nodded, his weathered features creased with a broad smile. "And this little guy," he added, ruffling Nathan's hair, "he's one lucky kid to have parents like you two." In that moment, surrounded by the unconditional love and support of my family, I knew that we had truly won. Carol's cruelty had not broken us. Instead, it had forged us into an unbreakable unit, a fortress of love and resilience that no force on earth could ever penetrate. As the days slipped by, in a haze of laughter, reminiscing, and gleeful chaos courtesy of Nathan's boundless energy, I found myself reflecting on the long, winding road that had brought us to this point. The struggles, the heartache, the moments when we had teetered on the brink of despair, all of it had been worth it for the sheer bliss of being surrounded by those who loved us. Flaws and all. And as for Carol, well, let's just say that karma had a way of evening the scales. After a health scare left her dependent on distant relatives who resented her very presence, she found herself utterly alone, a bitter, withered husk of a woman reaping the consequences of her own cruelty. But that was a fate I refused to dwell on, for it held no power over me anymore. My focus was solely on the future, a future brimming with love, laughter, and the promise of endless joy, all thanks to the incredible man by my side and the miraculous child we had brought into this world against all odds. As I watched Michael chase Nathan through the backyard, their peals of laughter ringing out like music, I knew that we had truly won. Carol's hatred had been vanquished by the power of our love, and nothing, not even the darkest of pasts, could ever dim the radiant future that stretched out before us.